unfortunately, I landed on both my kneecaps at about 5 feet in the air in hard sand. I had no cartilage. I shattered the cartilage behind my right kneecap. So I spent about 7 hours in the ER, and there, I was like, I have nowhere to go.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, trying to help you find adventure every day in any stage of life. You're going to hear from explorers, adventurers, business owners, and anyone living their life a little more out of the box than usual. Hey folks, hope you're having a good week so far. Thank you for all the folks that are sharing, that are telling friends about the show, family about the show, that are sharing it on social media, because it's making a huge difference. We are killing it this month, so let's keep that going. Tell somebody about it this week. Keep up the good work. You're the reason the show's happening, so thank you. Today's Throwback Thursday episode is with Travis. He's one of the old hosts, and it's from March 2016. But it's about motorcycles and Eric Hougen, who found this company, Wolfman Motorcycle Luggage, and also his love for motorcycle touring. And I hope you enjoy. It's something I'm definitely starting to get into, so I'm pretty interested to listen to it. I've actually never listened to this episode. Today's sponsor is CS Instant Coffee. You know, you've heard their name before. They're the makers of 100% Arabica instant coffee and compostable packages, and I actually just went on a backpacking trip and took some with me. It was crucial because I need coffee. Not a whole lot of things I need in this world, but I need coffee. So I brought some with me. It was great. Get a discount with them in the show notes, and here is the episode. Enjoy.
Welcome back to another episode of the Adventure Sports Podcast. This is your host, Travis. Today on the line with me is Eric Hougen from Wolfman Luggage. Wolfman Luggage does motorcycle luggage. They're an American company with American-made products, and we're going to have a little bit of a twist on our regular episodes, and this is going to be another one of the Adventure Entrepreneur shows. So I want to talk to Eric a little bit about what it's like to work doing something you truly love. So first of all, Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Travis. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Well, I've been meaning to catch up with you. I mean, we're almost neighbors. Wolfman Luggage is out of Longmont, Colorado, and I live in Longmont, Colorado, and been enjoying your products for years now. So I'm glad to have you on the show.
Well, good. Thank you for the support. Excellent. Happy to be here. So, ask any questions. I'll be glad to answer anything I can.
All right. Well, we will do that. So we always like to start off with a little bit of background on our guest. So take a little bit of time and fill us in. Who is Eric Hougen?
I guess I'll go back to the beginning. I grew up I've spent a large part of my life overseas in Latin America. I was born in El Salvador, actually a month premature, in my parents' bedroom. My dad delivered me. He was Peace Corps staff at the time. They had lived in Bolivia. They were the first crew to go to Bolivia in 1965, actually a little before then, 64. He grew up overseas in Venezuela. His dad was a geologist for Creole Oil. They did a lot of the exploration for Hugo Chavez. And, so I speak fluent Spanish, or as fluent as I can get. We lived in the States for a little bit, and then in the mid to late 70s, we moved overseas to the Dominican Republic and then to Bolivia again. He was then with the State Department. And then they were moving back to the Dominican Republic in 1984, 84. And I went off to private boarding school in New Hampshire. And then did not like it there. I was not a great student. I was a good kid, not a great student. I did 5 years of high school. I had to repeat my junior year. And then my senior year was done at a school called the Colorado Rocky Mountain School in Carbondale, Colorado. And then I guess we'll flip a little bit into how did I get into this. I've always been, as my dad called it, and I was talking to some of my staff today, that I've been a chitty bang bang kind of guy. I was always with my hands, always fixing stuff, building stuff, fixing my bike. I even went so far one time in Bolivia, I had an old Schwinn Stingray, and I wanted to do something different to the bike, and it had a bladed fork. So it was a most probably mildish steel or mild tensile. Well, I built a fire in our backyard barbecue, got it nice and hot, took that fork, stuck it in, got it nice and hot, and proceeded to beat it straight on the cement. And so it went from kind of a bent fork to a nice bladed straight fork, and filed it, cleaned it, got the wheel slots and everything pretty true and everything like that. So I've been involved with that for a while. How did I get interested in motorcycling? I was a child in the mid-'70s. I was living in the States, and one of the guys on our block rode motorcycles, motocross actually. He started out on an XR75 4-speed, so I was about the 72, 74 era bike, and then progressed into a Honda CR125 Elsinore, the black and silver and green ones.
Elsinore.
That was like the bike of the time.
Right.
And to go and he had leather pants, leather motocross pants. We lived on a dead end, so there was a vacant lot back there, and there was kind of a track, and so we'd go out and watch them ride once in a while and so on. So that was really cool. And when we moved from there to the Dominican Republic in late 77, my brother and I got two Honda Z50s. And that was the start of it.
I think most of us have started out on that little bike.
Yeah, and what really started this adventure lifestyle or this adventure motorcycling thing, the bikes had been around, but really what kicked it off, I think if you looked at history, kind of those milestones for industry or people was, Charlie and Ewan's trip around the world, long way around. That really kind of started this bug, if you will. But so for me, I can't remember the year. You'd have to look back in the AMA and so on, or actually just call the two guys and ask them if they remember. One of the biggest highlights for me getting into, I didn't know I was going to get a motorcycle later in life, or later we're talking like 2 years, had an opportunity when we lived in Louisiana to go to the Superdome and watch the Supercross. And I watched Marty Smith beat Bob Hanna on the 250 class. That was it. That was the highlight. I remember watching Wide World of Sports. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember ABC. Yeah, it was ABC's Wide World of Sports. They did a whole expose on Marty Smith and how he's kind of the California kid and where he came from, and that was just so cool. And so to watch him win was just awesome. And from then on, it was just been a love affair with motorcycling. I remember looking at a Popular Mechanics and seeing an R80 GS in there, and kind of thinking, wow, that was pretty cool. What is BMW doing and stuff like that? But kind of spent a lot of time in the outdoor industry or outdoor fields. I was doing a lot of climbing, mountain climbing, rock climbing, that kind of thing. Spent a semester in Alaska with an outfit called Knowles National Outdoor Leadership School. Throughout college, I did a lot of rock climbing my first semester. Spent a lot of time on rock, not a lot of time in class. Didn't quite know what I wanted to do, and then I met someone who did a lot of sewing repairs for one of the outdoor shops. And she started to explain what her degree is in, and so I went to investigate that. And so I have a degree in apparel production. I studied the processes of manufacturing clothing, how to design it, how to make patterns, how to cost it, how to manufacture it, how to sell it, the whole 9 yards. But I didn't like to make clothes. I was making backpacks and fanny packs and all kinds of stuff at the time, which was really difficult for the teachers to grade, which was kind of interesting. But I didn't want to make clothes, and they said sure. And but that's where I got this love to assemble now, how to make stuff, and I found that sewing was the way to do it. I did an internship at a backpack and bicycle touring company called Madden Mountaineering in Boulder, Colorado. They no longer exist, but their bicycle touring equipment was spot on. It was world traveled. But I had left and then started Wolfman. I started Wolfman in 1990, or I went into the motorcycle industry in 1992. Actually, it was in the backpack industry. I tried to make a line of backpacks, and that went nowhere. So I was like, not backpacking as much as I used to. I'm riding my motorcycle more. I actually went from my NX650 to a R80 GS BMW, and went to the Dealer Expo, which was in Cincinnati at the time. It was vastly different, to the point where you had to go to shows to do distribution, to get your name out. It was very difficult. You had to go to rallies and whatnot. It was very difficult. Now, it is incredibly simple. The access for information, to give people information, is huge and very simple compared to what that was. I started Wolfman in the second bedroom, the guest bedroom of our house. I would take the mattress off the bed, which was my table. I would do my stuff and put the mattress back on at the end of the day.
Well, I can completely relate to your desire to create with anything. I'm have admitted to enjoying sewing myself, to the extent that I've learned how to run all kinds of lathes and mills and machinery and weld, but sewing is just creating just like that with a different material. And the fact that my daughter and my wife have sewing machines in the house is very helpful, because I can jump on those and repair some piece of motorcycle equipment or sew a zipper onto it. I've made little chin skirts for a dual sport helmet to keep the wind out of there. And it's just it's another way to create and tinker with just another material. So I totally get your desire to do that and to create this motorcycle luggage.
Well, it was funny, I was sitting down with one of my professors, and he was a professor in the more in the machine side of things in the college. And I said, I sew. And he's like, it's just different facets of manufacturing, that's all. He had a kind of a southern twang. He was a cool dude. And it was true. I mean, it's just a different facet of putting something together. Instead of nuts and bolts, you're using thread and punch through and assembling it with a needle. So it's just something I knew how. I've been able to sew for quite a number of years. I actually beat up my mom's sewing machine to the point where she said, "Just leave my machine alone." Yeah, she wasn't too happy with me. But I learned from some very talented people. I'm a classically trained pattern maker. I do all the pattern work. I use no CAD or anything like that, because you can draw a picture, and I guess some of the things that I know is the business has changed. We don't manufacture like we used to, and so people draw these pictures. They give it what's called a spec sheet, so I can give it all the dimensions and just send it off. Let somebody else do the pattern work. Let somebody else figure out all that stuff. I don't. I do it with a see-through ruler and a number 7 lead pencil.
Nice.
That's it. And then I have L squares and French curves and a compass. I'm playing with my compass today. And that's it. It doesn't need to get any more complex than that, but you have to be able to visualize what I have the ability to visualize what I'm making.
So you sound very hands-on with your business still. I mean, I would think a lot of people 24 years into it would get to the point where they've just kind of pushed some of that, the work that you do off, to other people. But you must truly love what you do, to be down there making the patterns and being down there with everybody else. I don't,
that's my job. And it has always been to do the design work, the R&D. That's been my job, my main focus. I'm not an accountant. I have an amazing financial manager that works here, and she's way smarter than I am in certain things. But Can't you do pattern work? Most people don't know how to. So I was able to, I have looked at, do I want to do sales? I get on the phone when I have to deal with a real tough customer most of the time.
Right. Let's talk about ups and downs a little bit. In adventure and in business, we have both. A lot of times, especially in business, we think, like you've alluded to, people look at it and say, oh, I want to do what you do. You've made it big time and it just seems like the grass is so green. I want to do that. But there's obviously some downsides to that. So how about a business story about, a downtime, things that didn't go right? And let's follow that up with a time being out on the motorcycle.
Okay. A downtime in business must have been, actually, it was just recently. It was last year. I decided to make a change. I looked at Kurt and Martha Forget, who own Black Dog Cycle Works. They have a real unique lifestyle. They've wrapped their business around their lifestyle rather than wrapping their lifestyle around their business.
Right.
Which is pretty unique because they spend half the year in Baja now. They built a house and everything. And so I'm like, man, I want to take some time off. I was getting burned out. I mean, after 25 years.
Yeah, I would think so.
So I looked at their business model and said, I could do that. I want to try this. So I went through it really eyes wide open. And I talked to everybody. I talked to them, how they do it, and really gotten down to the nitty gritty. I talked to a manufacturer and said, I gave them basically a big chunk of our product line to manufacture for me. And they, oh yeah, we can do this. We can do this. And we even went to a fulfillment company, and they would warehouse and ship the goods. And so then it was just an office that we were going to have. So we didn't need a lot of space. So we moved out of we actually had about almost 12,000 square feet by the time we had a sewing facility in there with 4 operators, full-time production manager, the whole bit. And I cleaned house, fired everybody, except 2 people. There's only 2 people that came and have been here since then. But I cleaned house, and I was going to make it small and run things again. Oh, actually 3 employees. We keep the seamstress on staff to do in-house production and then do repairs and any emergency stuff we have to deal with. We moved facilities. Our landlord over promises and under delivers. We signed a lease January 20th last year. We were not physically in our building until mid-May. We had to leave our other building, so we actually lived in 2 offices that we spent about 4 hours cleaning because nobody had cleaned these offices. Our stuff was somewhere else. All our stuff, everything we owned, somewhere else in the building. We couldn't get to it. We couldn't ship retail. That was manufacturing was not up to speed. Another manufacturer just couldn't. It was very unorganized, and it was bad. Just very stressful. So some things didn't work. I mean, we settled this out. We survived. But some things did not work for us and the way our business is run. We straightened up manufacturing. I spent a huge amount of time when we talk about product. I looked at all our stuff, and first of all, I reduced what we had in inventory because we couldn't make it all. And so I had to look at what makes sense for Wolfman. And so I had to remove quite a bit of product. If the spread between one product A and product B is real close, people don't know which one to get. There's kind of a confusion. So last year was really kind of an interesting year. It was a struggle. It was frustrating. I mean, we didn't have product for customers. We actually we stopped selling to distributors overseas. Everybody became a dealer. We were not making enough profit to sell overseas. So a lot of lessons were learned, some good, some bad, but that was kind of I want to say while it's going on, it's kind of a low point, but looking back at it, it's like, man, we learned a lot. And my philosophy in life is, make mistakes. You're supposed to. My patterns don't always work some days, but you tried. Biggest thing is, did you learn something? Because if you didn't, then it was a moot point. And if you didn't try it, you'll never go beyond yourself.
So we want to thank our sponsor, Athletic Brewing, for promoting a healthy lifestyle through making some of the world's best non-alcoholic craft beer. They make excellent tasting NA for healthy, active, modern adults. They use certified all-organic grains, and each can of non-alcoholic beer is only between 50 and 70 calories. They have IPA, golden ale, stouts, and tons of seasonal offerings. And recently, they actually just took home the gold medal at the U.S. Open Beer Championships for their double hop IPA. If you would like to get your hands on some, you can save 15% by using the code ADVENTURE at athleticbrewing.com. Athletic Brewing, the best tasting way to keep your promises. And I also want to thank our sponsor, CS Instant Coffee, for making this show happen. They make 100% Arabica instant coffee. They use compostable packaging, and each package makes about 20 ounces of coffee. So I'll take one of those with me on an overnight trip, and it makes 2 pretty good-sized cups of coffee. And it's an awesome feeling knowing I can just throw that in my backpack, find some hot water, and I'm good to go. Save 20% by using the code ADVENTURE at csinstant.coffee.
Two years ago, actually, a low point personally, I landed on both my kneecaps at about 5 feet in the air in hard sand. I had no cartilage. I shattered the cartilage behind my right kneecap. It was actually pretty terrifying when just the event that I had to get out, and I was in Arizona. My wife had to come get me. Some people, luckily, we have a friend there where I could park my rig. I had to be taken to the hospital. Here's one of those things that, if you wonder how many people, having lived through this, you wonder how many people would be able to put up with this. So I spent about 7 hours in the ER, and there, I was like, I have nowhere to go. My wife was flying in that evening. She got a hotel, and I was like, well, it's time for you to, to check out. And I had to call my own cab. They didn't do it. I'm in a wheelchair. And then the nurse takes me out, outside the emergency exit and so on, where people would get picked up. Parks me on the sidewalk and says, "Have a nice day," and walked away.
Oh my God.
Everything else was on me. I had to shuffle I could barely walk. I had crutches and a bag full of crap. I was able to go to my vehicle and at least get a pair of underwear, just something, stuff I could take a shower. Hadn't bathed in a few days. I was at a motorcycle event and kind of somehow got my butt in the taxi. Taxi got me to the hotel. Got out of the hotel. The lady was booked up at the front desk and no one was available. I had to walk. I think by the time I was all said and done, through the elevators to the room for about 150 yards, barely walk, with crutches and bag full of crap in my hands, like knee braces and just, about the size, not quite as big as a hefty bag, but it sure felt like it that day.
Wow.
And finally got in the hotel room, just got on the bed, got situated, and I just fell asleep. My wife came in, and then the next day we spent one more night in Phoenix and flew home, got to see my orthopedist. He's like, "Oh boy, this is not good, Eric." I'm like, yeah, tell me about it, and so on. And my wife and the nurse left. It was Doc and I, and this was the thing then I got scared. I got a little panicky. He said, let's make sure you walk again. And that was like, oh Jesus, oh God, oh boy. I did everything right. Though the odd thing was, since my knees were bent when I landed, the meniscus on both knees, the ligaments, all are in good shape. The joint itself is in good shape. I can't run downstairs, can't run anymore. I can run upstairs and walk quickly upstairs, but I can't run much. And very rarely do you see me get on my knees because of that.
Yeah, it probably makes hiking difficult too. Great going up.
Yeah, so I can't. Yeah, and so we walk a lot, my wife and I, just in our neighborhood, but it's not something I'm just like, so life is an adventure, and it's not just in business, it's just life in general.
Yep, no doubt. Well, let's talk about business and bootstrapping versus jumping in with both feet. There's two ways to go about it, and it sounds to me like you went the bootstrapping route. I think a lot of people out there that, are just getting into business or thinking about getting into business, they're dealing with that question now. So what's your take on either or,
Well, I mean, first of all, you need to have some funding to start a business. I was lucky that my wife worked and supported us. And I have returned the favor, if you will. The other thing is, so you need some funding. You're going to have to, at some point, you're going to need money. That's whatever it takes. And some people, they can, you can do it in two ways. One, you can just jump into it, cut the ties and jump in. There's a lot of fear in that. So a lot of people start to ease into it. You see a lot of small companies in like an adventure rider where people do it as a side job. And it slowly starts to gain some legs, if you will, and then they start to cut the apron strings from the full-time guaranteed income. And that usually is sometimes the safest way to go, and it may be the more comfortable. Or you'd start a business, get loans, you'd have to get investors and so on. But then at that point, you really have to be a professional business immediately.
So we've heard and learned a lot about Wolfman as far as the inner workings of the business, and I appreciate that since we're doing this as an entrepreneurial episode. But take a little time and give us the highlights. What is it Wolfman specifically does, and what will people find when they visit your site or see your products in the store? I think, most people know what Wolfman Luggage is, but are we talking street bikes, dirt bikes, a little bit of both?
We cover motorcycling. I'll say that our focus is adventure and dual sport bikes and enduro bikes. So when I say enduro bike, I'm thinking more of a single cylinder off-road motorcycle. Not a motocross bikes we can fit because they kind of have the same features. But from your big adventure bikes, we always talked about big, medium, and small. Big bike would be your 1200 GS, 10RA 1200. That's kind of considered a big bike. Medium bike would be like your 650 singles, KLR, DR 650. That category. And then small bike was kind of your enduro bike, WR250R. And we kind of threw KTM 500, 525, 530, kind of in that small bike category because it's just a smaller stature motorcycle. So we provide luggage for all that area. Plus, we have a lot of crossover. Any of our dry bags, our dry expedition dry duffels will fit on any bike. Street bike, ATV, UTV, back of your pickup, be dustproof, waterproof, and so on. We do a small 3-piece line for street called the Skyline series. It consists of a pair of saddlebags, a duffel bag, and a tank bag. It's made out of a sailcloth material. It's a 4-layer laminate. Very expensive, and we had to buy a die lot of it. Which is about 1,000 yards. And so it's very expensive. It's not something we promote a lot right now. We're still known for our adventure. product. It would be kind of funny if we went and tried to make stuff for Harley. So I ride adventure bikes, I ride dual sport. I know these things. I kind of feel I have a good idea of what people need and want and so on, and how it all fits together. We're trying to look at, some things other than motorcycling, but things that have crossover, keeping the same customer interested in the Wolfman brand. Now I've kind of gotten bigger into how do we take that customer and keep them interested, because they can only buy so much motorcycle luggage, and we make it to last. So the repeat business, unless they crash, burn, and break something, or buy a new bike, sold the bike with the luggage on it, they'll come back, and so on. So what do we do for that? And that's some of the things we're working on. Started with the Overland duffel, really nice duffel tail trunk, but also can be used for travel. I use it when I travel airlines, and car, and stuff like that. So when you go on our website, we have everything we sell on the website, rain covers, all the accessories, and we do a full line of repair parts. And also in the store, we offer the same services. We usually have a bike that's loaded. In our sales, Justin and Bryson and Larry can help you out, get you all set up, and we sell directly out of our store also. Also, we have a local dealership. Rocky Mountain Kawasaki sells our product, and then up and down the Front Range, Revzilla, Rocky Mountain ATV, Aerostitch, and all over the place. And so we specialize in adventure luggage.
All right. And your site to go see all that good stuff is?
www.wolfmanluggage.com. And we're going to have our Wolf Store Adventure Days open house Saturday, May 7th from 10 to 2 at 350 Terry Street, Suite 150 in Longmont, Colorado. And we're going to have Wolf Store specials, industry friends, some dealerships will be here, tour companies, rental companies. We might have a swap meet. We don't know. We're going to have we still have some old racks and just kind of old stuff we're trying to get rid of. We moved it, and I'm like, I want this out. So, and we'll also offer, my wife makes some mean hot dogs, she found out. Everybody found out, and she was quite surprised. Like, I didn't know I could cook that well. So we do hot dogs and stuff like that. So it's usually a really fun time. We'll have people from TPA, Trail Preservation Alliance, and Covco, and we do $1 donation we raffle off a bunch of door prizes and stuff, and all the money goes to Covco, and we match whatever it is, dollar for dollar. I'm a big advocate on trail preservation and so on, and it's very important for me to be part of that. We have though it's small, we try to have a little bit of a philanthropic enterprise within Wolfman. We're a corporate sponsor to the Backcountry Discovery Route. And we also promote and donate to TPA and Covco. Because if the trails close, my business would suffer a little bit.
Oh, yeah. We wouldn't have any good place to ride. And there's no better place to ride in the country than Colorado. We have so many awesome trails to get out onto, so we got to fight to keep them open.
Oh, yeah. And I also, once in a while, I'll lead a trip. I'm going to be leading the Colorado Backcountry Discovery Route for Scott Leatt. He's a rental company and runs tours, so I'll be running. I did a Utah last year, and everybody had a really good time. So I was asked to do Colorado. So it's going to be a little longer. I did it in 3 nights the first time. We motored through that one. This one's going to be a little slower pace.
Well, good. So if you live on the Colorado Front Range, Denver to Fort Collins, we'll say, then swing on May 7th from 10 to 2 to the new Wolfman store in Longmont and visit Eric and get yourself one of those great hot dogs we talk about, and maybe you win some door prizes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look forward to seeing anybody and everybody.
Well, why don't we sign off with a fun story?
Okay.
So we've talked about busting kneecaps and the ups and downs of business. What about a good riding story that can leave us with some inspiration before we go?
I got a good one. So I actually, my dad was in town. He had something going on at the YMCA up in Estes Park. So he's like, well, I was like, I'll come up. So I would ride Johnny Park, Pearson Park trails and then I dropped down into Estes and so on. Unfortunately, due to the floods, Pearson Park has been closed for about 2 years. Johnny Park is still open. I was on a BMW Cross Challenge at the time, so I'm kind of on the flats, gone through the rock garden, some of the technical sections. I'm kind of now more on just the dirt road part of Pearson Park, heading north towards Estes Park. And I see this kind of, something catches my eye, some movement off trail, off the road, kind of in the trees a little bit. And I'm standing on the pegs, the, average single cylinder dual sport bike's pretty tall. I mean, I'm only almost 5'10", so, but I had a foot, so I'm about close to 7 feet with a helmet and boots and everything on. And this full-size male moose cuts in front of the trail. Scared the crap out of me. And you don't see moose a lot on the Front Range. I spooked him somewhere. He's running next to me. Zoom! Right across. Bike stalls. I'm like, whoa. I practically dropped the bike. And I'm looking down the path that he had run. He had sheared off branches and some trunks up to almost 2 inches in diameter. Wow. With that rack. And the power that he had. I had spooked him, almost peed my pants because I was like, oh my gosh. And then then last year, I was coming back from a ride in Silverthorne. I was up in there's this neat riding area around, between Fraser, Hot Sulphur Springs, and, what's the pass? But in that area, kind of the Granby area, I'm riding along, minding my own business, just kind of cruising my head, just kind of in the moment. I'm trotting with a moose for about a half a mile because it's too steep for him to run down. He's kind of freaked out. I'm a little freaked out. I slow down. He speeds up a little bit and finally kind of saw his brake. I chopped the throttle and he just kind of ran away. So, yeah, it was the two coolest things was to ride with a moose. You don't see those that often.
No, that is pretty cool. I've come across elk, and they are mighty big when you're on a motorcycle, but a moose...
that's the largest horse animal in the world. I mean, out there like 7 feet at the shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah, I've ridden by them at distance, They've been off the side of a highway, maybe, 30 yards off. But when you get that close to a moose, and that thing is towering over you.
Yeah, you're just like, wow, what was that? I'm like, oh my God. It's just kind of cool because they're so, they're not that prevalent. You get them more in Walden and kind of that little area, but not much like on the Front Range. That's really odd. Those were cool experiences. I mean, just the stuff that motorcycle brings, what motorcycling brings, it brings you camaraderie, and some of the best people I've ever met have all been on motorcycle. And, it's a freedom that we all know about. You kind of get lost in yourself because it is, even though you're riding with a group, you're still riding your own ride. And, if you drop the bike, well, you dropped the bike. So it's such a rewarding experience. And
I can't agree any more than that.
Though I must say, the one area I don't know if I would enjoy riding is like traffic and lane splitting in LA and stuff like that. I'm like, that doesn't look too much fun. And I don't think
that's not the adventure we're out for.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I remember though I'll tell you another story. This was funny. This was one of the best stories. So back in when I started Wolfman in the early 90s, my wife worked for a company that made they used Guatemalan fabric to make like MC Hammer pants. It was kind of the dead were still in full force, hacky sacks, little wallets and all this stuff. And so she did a lot of design work she was the designer and product developer for them. So we went down to Guatemala to a small town on Lake Atitlan, which is an old volcano. And that's where their head office and one of her bosses lived. There were three partners. Two of them were in Boulder. One was in Guatemala, and he ran the facility. They had a little house and production facility. I went down and I actually taught them how to cut fabric and stuff like that, how to do pattern work and how to treat patterns and so on. So I kind of earned my keep, if you will. But we had to go source fabric, and it was really interesting. These were people's homes that they would weave, and the fabric was 36 inches wide. I said, why is that? And he said, well, that's as far as a woman could throw the shuttle and catch it on the other side. And watching them, they would dye the yarn, and then they would set the yarn, and they would show, okay, this is going to be a person, this will be a dog or an animal. And it was really, really neat, very, very, really neat to learn. So Panajachel is at the waterline, and kind of the surrounding area is a town called Solola. And you have to kind of go down this windy, it's paved, but I would say a kind of a grade D paved job, kind of just contoured down from Solola to Panajachel. And at the time, they were having problems with banditos. There were a couple other towns in that area, but they're like, don't go there and so on. And the guy who rented us motorcycles, so we had to go do some sourcing, trying to find fabric, and we're doing it all on a motorcycle. And we had these were big bikes in Guatemala. It was a DT 175 two-stroke, and we rented a XT 185 four-stroke. So those are big bikes in Latin America, mainly because of taxation and so on. Like a 150 is big. You see a 1200 GS, that's a monster motorcycle.
Yeah, it might as well be a limousine there.
And the reason they're expensive is their import duties are so high. Up to 90%. I remember talking to Ron Ayers, who was running tours. He was based in Brazil. I'm like, so what's a GS costing you? About 20, and this is 10 plus years ago. They're $20-some thousand for what we were paying close to 15 for. It was 23, I think, just because of import tax and stuff like that. So anyway, we're coming back, and the rule of thumb kind of all over Latin America, unless you're in cities, you don't drive at night. And people are like, why? Well, it's this weird thing that I knew in Bolivia was, in Bolivia, people never drove with their headlights on. They'd use their parking lights, but they never drove their headlights on. People are like, why? Because it saves the battery. That was the theory.
Really?
Yeah. You're not using your battery.
They don't use alternators down there.
They do, but there's just this kind of weird thing, at least at the time. And when you'd come to something, you just flash your lights. You don't honk. You just kind of flash your lights at night if they're on. Or you turn them on, kind of thing. So it was just kind of a theory. And like in Baja, you don't travel at night because cows migrate to the roads and stuff like that. But so we're coming back from doing all this. We spent a day out looking for fabric and got some leads and so on. And it's becoming dusk. Now, the road to go from Solola to Panajachel at the time, big military base. They were still having a lot of problems, military guerrilla warfare going on. And so there's a drawbridge, not a drawbridge, but the arm. What is that? Like a railroad arm? What do you call it?
It's a crossing.
Crossing. So they have one of those. And at a certain time of night, they close it because they want to close the road. They don't want people going up and down. They just want to just shut the road for the night, unless an absolute emergency. So we're right at the cross. We're right at the crossing, at the threshold, if you will. It's getting dark, and we're all looking around. We're going, "Are we going to do this?" And the guys are like, "Well, you got to make a decision quick because we're going to close the road. We're going to put the gate down, and it's done." And we're like, "Oh man, I don't know, man. I want to go sleep in my bed. We got to get down. We got to do this." And and then the commandant's like, "What's going on here?" So the commander of the whole army base, and you got tanks and military vehicles and I don't know how many men. and barracks and all that stuff, barbed wire, just like a traditional, smaller military base. And he goes, look, I'll make you a deal. You can spend the night in my guest room. That's the safest place in Guatemala. You're surrounded by, X amount of troops, all heavily armed. My wife, her boss, and I, we look all at each other and went, nah, and we jumped on the bikes and just took off. So my wife is tucked behind me. I mean, literally as small as she can get. Her boss is, maybe 10 feet in front of me. And we were going as fast as these little, we were on, I think we were on the DT-175, so these two strokes, we were just ringing them out. Out of the corner of my eye, I see 3 banditos running down the trail. It's like a straight down shot. And they got guns. You can see the guns that they're carrying. And we're like, oh boy. Right as their foot hit the tarmac, the pavement, I had passed. And we were like, woohoo, flicking them off, go. We get into Pana Hotel, and it was as if it was the finish line. We blow through, and people are like, yeah! Because they could see our 2 lights just going down, wiggling down the mountain as fast as possible. So we get in, it was like this big, yeah, you made it! You're stupid, but you made it! And we're like, yeah! So we go to return the bikes. The owner, who is this French guy, yelling at us in French, cussing at us. My bikes could have been stolen. And we're like, yeah, but we made it. And he's like, you did. That is cool. But So that was one of the funkiest things I've ever done on a bike, getting chased by.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's
crazy. Pretty cool. So
lived through it once, but don't really want to go back.
Yeah, I don't want to do that again. So
that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been fun talking about motorcycles and in business with you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having us.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for listening to this episode. It really means the world to us that you want to spend your time with us. If you'd like to help us further, please just leave us a review on iTunes, share us on social media, tell your friends about us. You can become a patron, a supporter of the show for $5 a month at patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. And if you know somebody that would make a good guest, reach out. We're always looking for good adventure and outdoor stories. And lastly, thank you to our sponsors, whose messages follow right now. Athletic Brewing makes the best non-alcoholic craft beer. Go to their website at athleticbrewing.com and use the code in our show notes to save 15% on your first order. After all this adventure talk, if you're needing some gear yourself, but you need some advice before buying, go to backpacktribe.com, where you can ask questions to the owners who have experience with all the gear, as well as all of it for sale right there on their website.